here, on the very rim of known space, justice is a long way away.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Spaz.
Actually, we should rename this particular show to the Obliterator Pod.
Son of a bitch. That's good. That's good. I didn't even think of that. Obliterator Pod, episode 1. Shit. Actually, though, this would be technically episode 3, since this is your third appearance on, I think it's your third appearance on the show, Trevor. Also joining us is your co-host, Julie.
Hello from the great sunny warm north.
Oh, good. Hope it what's my cat doing? What are you doing, Matilda? Also joining us is your co-host, back from wherever he was, Thorsten. Oh my God, we're so happy that your internet is back, dude. Oh my God.
Hello again, and I'm happy to be back here too.
Us too. Oh my God. Your co-host, Jacob.
Torpedoes not loaded.
And your co-host, David.
Yo, yo, yo.
Friends, joining us, as I said, for the third time. Remind me, Trevor, where are you in Hawaii? I don't remember specifically.
I'm at Ever Beach, which is just to the west of Pearl Harbor.
Oh, okay.
On Oahu.
Okay. Joining us from near Pearl Harbor, Oahu, Obliterator Pod. Maybe we should start a pod about the Starfleet game. Called Obliterator Pod. That was a terrific and terrible idea. Thank you, Trevor Sorensen, the creator of the Starfleet games, to talk to us about the, thank God, recently released, as of 2 days ago, as we record this, Starfleet 2 Krellan Commander 2.0. It's finally out, you guys. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's finally... It's out. It's finally out. We did it. We all did it. Oh my God. It was such an effort. I have never been involved in a game launch before. This is my first time. I'm exhausted. But what a journey. What a journey, which is what I want to talk about today. So folks, if you're unaware, well, Trevor, how would you describe Starfleet 2? Since it's your baby. How would you describe it?
A work of a lifetime.
Fair. Very fair.
No, it is. I wrote Starfleet 1 based on existing Starfleet games that were on mainframe computers, and it was originally planned to be a Star Trek game because that's what all those original games were. And I contacted, this is when I was with, our company was called Cygnus, and contacted Paramount Pictures to get the license for it. And they said, no, someone else already had the license. And so I said, well, if we change the universe and the story and some of the things about it, is it okay to do it? And they said yes. And I said, and we're going to planning on using these terms. And I mentioned Starfleet and photon torpedoes and stuff. And they said, yeah, that's fine. And so we made up, a friend of mine who's a board game designer, Richard Launius, came up with the backstory and the history and everything, and of the Krellans and the Zaldrons. And so that I'd been working on that Starfleet game since grad school. When we formed Cygnus, we published it, Starfleet 1. It was reasonably popular. We sold a few thousand. Then Electronic Arts said, hey, we like this. We want you to become an affiliated label. So we started selling tens of thousands of it. And Starfleet 1 was a fun little game, but I was thinking about it doesn't really have everything that I want to do in a game like this. And so I started designing Starfleet 2, and I thought, well, you know, instead of just zooming from quadrant to quadrant like you do in Starfleet 1, I wanted to have a more realistic, where you have a display where your ship's in the center and things move around it. and you actually move from a star system to star system instead of having several stars in a single quadrant and that. And so what I basically did was I designed a game that I really wanted to play and put in as many of the features as I could cram into the 640K RAM machines of the time. And one of my good friends at NASA, Mark Baldwin, who had done a couple of the versions, I think the Atari 8-bit and version of Starfleet 1. I designed the planetary invasion module and also the boarding module, and then he programmed them, implemented them, and which helped a lot because I didn't have time to do those myself. So that's pretty much how it came, but it was much more complex than I realized, and it took a couple years longer to develop than I thought it would, which is why Electronic Arts was getting real upset with me, and they more or less forced us to rush out version 1 a few months before it should have been out.
Yeah, that's why that's one of the reasons we kept we didn't like put a date on this one for a while, because we're like, we don't want to rush this and have a repeat of the first one.
And another problem is that you kept coming up with great ideas to improve it, so I had to keep putting those in.
It wasn't just me.
No, it wasn't just you, but it was a lot of it was you, because you were streaming it. I watched the streams, and you would mention something. Oh, it'd be really good if it could do this, and so I'd take note of it and put it in the program. And sometimes you said, Trevor, could you do this? And so, of course, nearly every time I did it, and that pushed the launch date back. But I'm glad that it's out now with everything in it that we really wanted, instead of coming out a year ago with not as much.
Yeah,
considering how much you've added over the past year, yeah, absolutely, unquestionably.
Like the two big things I think that were added were Fleet Command and the upgraded probes, and those alone are game changers. My God.
Upgraded probes?
Yeah.
I might have not gotten to those. That or I missed them.
Oh, once you reach, we'll explain how the game works, folks, if you haven't gotten there yet. But the game has 7 ranks. I'll just throw this out there right now. The game has 7 ranks. And when you reach the rank of Prefect, which is the 5th rank? Yes, the 5th rank. You're able to purchase, if you have enough money, an upgraded battlecruiser, which includes.
And by the way, that's game money, not real money.
Game money. Yes. Yeah.
The fact that we have to clarify this.
Yeah, that's true. No in-app purchases. It's a DOS game from 1989. I don't even know if they even thought about that back in 1989.
Sort of, probably, but they don't know how to implement it.
That's a very good clarification, guys. Thank you. Once you have enough in-game money, let's be clear, you can purchase an upgraded battle cruiser, which has better armor, more crew, more troops to board ships, and upgraded probes, which do so much more than the regular probes you get in the beginning. Oh my God.
And this encourages you, from what I can gather, to actually explore and settle down planets and look for bases and hunt down merchant ships and yoink them back to base instead of just going back to base the microsecond you finish the mission. Like you kind of were. That was kind of the optimum beforehand.
Yeah. Trevor, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just saying that in the original version 1 up through 1.5b, which was the last one that was released, the number of Krells was just for your own personal satisfaction. And if you were playing with other players on that particular game, it has a list of the fleet. And so you could just compare the total number of Krells you've earned with others. But that was it. There was no real benefit or of having more Krells. And by the way, that's the money unit is a Krell in the program. And I thought that, and I'd seen other games where you can go and buy upgrades, new weapons or new engines or things like that. And I thought, well, that would be a really good aspect to add to this, and it would give you a reason to really maximize the number of Krells. And there are lots of really fun ways to maximize the Krells. And also not be too wanton in your destruction of planets and cities, because that decreases the number of Krells. So I went ahead and added the upgraded cruiser battle cruiser where you could give it you could name it yourself, and it get, as Brian said, you get all of these additional features to it. And the one that I really worked hard in design and developing were the upgraded probes, because if you look at the original probes box where you launch the probes, it had something like distance and rotation or something, because they were originally meant to be placed at a certain distance from the sun and then do a rotation around, sort of like a search pattern, but that was never implemented. And so I thought that I should upgrade the probes. You should be able to have more than 5 at once, and in operations you can control 12 at once. And I had already put in where destroyers could go visit planets and scan them, so I just put the same logic in for probes. So probe can go from planet to planet in a remote system somewhere and go into orbit, scan the planet, and send you information on it. And if it happens to be an enemy planet, that's probably the end of the probe's journey, because it'll be destroyed. But they also have a passive mode, which makes them almost impossible to detect. They just sit in the system passively, which is the way it is with the standard probes. And they will report on the comings and goings of enemy ships into that system. So it was a lot of fun to think of all the things to add for the enhance the upgraded probes, and the interface for them, to how to best show it.
Yeah, you wouldn't think a battle like a space battle cruiser war game would have so much exploration, but this game does have a wonderful amount of exploration, and probes are a big part of that, because every mission you have to seek out something. You're basically seeking out something, whether it's a specific type of planet, or a specific type of enemy ship, or eventually just everybody. You have to find them. And that's one of the joys for me of this game, at least, is the finding them. Exploration never stops being useful, which is great.
One thing I want to add about the probes, the upgraded probes, after I had developed them and realized how wonderful they were, I thought about the possibility of just making that the new probes for the whole game, all the ranks. But I wanted to keep something special for the upgraded battlecruiser. I mean, it's you feel like you're really getting your money's worth once you get these new upgraded probes. And so that's why I just left the standard probes for the lower levels.
And I think the standard probes are better for newer players. They're a little less complex. There aren't all the modes and everything. Like people I'm talking, like I was talking to someone on a forum earlier, and they were reading the manual about upgrade probes, and they're like, this might be too much for me. I'm like, yeah, you say that now, but eventually you will be conducting those probes like an orchestra. You go here, and you go here, and you go here. And yeah, I mean, that's part of the joy of this game, is the learning. So yeah, something might seem daunting at first, but once you get to it, you're like, oh yeah, this is great. And I wanted to ask you about that, because folks, if you're unaware, this is a complex game. There are a lot of moving parts. It's a serious simulation and war game, basically. And the game has a rank system. So there are 35 missions spread across 7 ranks. Each rank has 5 missions, and each mission has a specific goal in mind. How did you come up with I've always been interested how you came up with the rank system, because it's such a, I'm going to use the word, I'm sorry, elegant way of, I think at least, onboarding a player to slowly onboarding a player to how complex this game can become over time.
That was inherited from Starfleet 1. Starfleet 1 had a rank system as well. And I just thought that was a way to not overwhelm a player, but sort of gradually bring them into and learn things. And then I can add another level of complexity. And also, I mean, I wrote the rationale for this back in the Starfleet 1 days. So it actually goes back prior to Starfleet 1 to the original Fortran program Starfleet that was on the deck computers. I described why I had this ranking system, but it also gives you some sense of achievement as you work your way up. And that's for like the long term. And for the short term, I added in the awards, the medals, and things like that, which gives you, for individual missions, gives you a sense of reward. I know in recent games, like I know the Starfleet Deluxe for Android had accomplishments you could earn, and you could have a whole string of these accomplishments. So I guess that's a thing that's used now. But I think my game, Starfleet, was one of the first ones that awarded medals and had the ranking structure for going through it, because I know the original Starfleet games did not have that.
In fact, wasn't the original Starfleet kind of just... wasn't there this like one sort of ASCII-based Star Trek game that was just you flying around one ship blowing up Klingons? Wasn't it kind of similar to that one?
Yeah, and that's a basic premise for Starfleet 1. I just added a bunch of enhancements, but it's the same basic play system. You have 10 by 10 quadrants on some versions. It was 8 by 8 quadrants, and in each quadrant there were either 10 by 10 or 8 by 8 sectors, and you just had one ship and you just fought against Klingons and went zooming from quadrant to quadrant. There were star bases where you could resupply, and stars which were sort of like, you know, that you could hide behind, but that was the only thing they were used for. Actually, the enemy could hide behind them, but I added a lot of features like being able to board and capture enemy ships, and tractor beam, and a number of things that I added in that went into Starfleet 1 that weren't in the original Star Trek games.
You know, I wanted to ask, and I just wanted to point out that not all of us were here for the first two interviews. And in doing a little research on you, I mean, it's like, while you're the designer of this game, it's also Dr. Sorensen, Doctorate of Engineering, Lunar Mission Manager for NASA, NASA Medal of Exceptional Scientific Achievement, and currently, according to what I see, is Project Manager in the Hawaii Spaceflight Laboratory. I mean, it's like, to me, it's like, how does someone go from this really accomplished scientist to like a game designer? You know, I mean, obviously, I got a friend who's a game designer that started out as an ichthyologist. So, but I was just curious, you know, I'm seeing your background, and there's obviously a big story there, because I was playing the game before the show, and David said, "Oh, he really is a rocket scientist."
Well, Julie, that's what really came out. I mean, back when I was in high school, there were two avenues of three major, well, let's say four major, I'm sound like Monty Python, of the many avenues of interest that I had. Okay, one was surfing. I used to go board riding. Another was I was in a rock group. I played keyboards in a rock group. in high school. Third one was that I started a rocket club, building steel rockets with their own propellant and launching them and that. And I've actually, that's obtainable online in my memoirs, the story of that. And the fourth one was wargaming. And I started that actually when I was in primary school, and then into high school. We built a big 8x8 board with plaster of Paris terrain. My friends handcrafted, this was HO scale, 72nd scale, handcrafted buildings out of balsa wood. This was a World War II Bavarian type battle. We hand painted all the figures and the tanks and everything like that. So I was really into miniature wargaming. And when I moved to the US and started university, my parents had also moved at the same time to South Carolina. And in the summers, I built other boards and introduced my friends to both wargaming and rocketry. And one of those friends, who was still in high school when I started college, later became the chief historian of NASA, and is a very prolific author in the history and space history area. But anyway, so I had these two interests in wargaming, also rocketry and that. And when I was in grad school, which was in the late 70s, I saw somebody playing the Star Trek game on a monitor. They were remote from a large Honeywell, the mainframe computer, and this was like written in Fortran or something. And I saw it, and I found out how to log in and play it myself, and it was so much fun. I thought, oh, this is really cool. And I tried to get in touch, find who the authors were, and I couldn't. I think it came from MIT originally, but so I got hold of a HP 9830 with 8K RAM and a thermal printer.
Oh wow!
And a 2-line LED display, 32 character LED display. And I decided, I thought, well, that I'd like to try and mimic that. So I and the only language it would take was BASIC. So in BASIC, I wrote a game I called Starfleet Battles, and which was based on this type of Star Trek quadrant sector type thing, except you didn't see it happen on a display. It printed every update out on thermal paper.
Oh, gee. Oh my God. Wow.
And something, and so I'd get rolls of this paper as it played the game, because it would be like a teletype printing out every line of the screen, every update. And then when I went to NASA Ames to work on my doctorate, I in my spare time, I converted that to Fortran because I had access to a DEC computer. I converted it to Fortran and greatly expanded it into a game called Starfleet, which was actually distributed worldwide through the DEC users group. And then when I went to NASA Johnson Space Center, I got several of my fellow engineers interested in it, and they were all playing this on the, and we could link up with my friends back at NASA Ames, and so we were playing this game. And when the IBM PC came out, I said, at last there's a computer powerful enough to have this game. So that's when we formed a company, limited partnership called Cygnus, with 7 partners. 2 of them were from NASA Ames, and the rest were from NASA Johnson Space Center. And one of them later became an astronaut. But that purpose that we had for forming the company was to build a space shuttle simulator game. And but we had to start that from scratch. And I said, well, I already have this Starfleet game written. We could just convert it over and get some money from selling that. So that became Starfleet 1, which had to be converted back to BASIC because the Fortran compiler initially on the PC was a hog and was no good, so we had to convert it back to first interpretive BASIC, and then later we were so thrilled that they had a BASIC compiler. So that's sort of, I know that was a lengthy answer, Julie, but that's sort of
not at all. See, in reading through your bio here is incredibly interesting. It mentions like a hostile takeover of the Interstellar Corporation, forcing you to sell your shares. And I just want to say why I'm an avid gamer. I am also have an avid interest in space and NASA. And even though, your game is incredibly interesting, your background at NASA just impresses the hell out of me. And if you still work at the Hawaii Space Flight Laboratory, I want to come and visit.
Yeah, we're actually, we built a satellite that was launched from the ISS space station in November 2020 and lasted about a year and a half before it re-entered. And we have a satellite that's twice as large, which is still a small satellite, that we are delivering down to the Johnson Space Center next month, the beginning of next month. And it's then going to go to Florida and be launched up to the ISS next March and will be deployed from there. It has a hyperspectral thermal imager that was developed at the university. And for that particular one, I am the operations manager, working out developing the operations for the satellite, and we're sort of testing those operations right now. I also teach several classes, and I have another spin-off company, Intercell Technologies, and we have a 2-year NASA contract to develop the management of a swarm of satellites. And we also, the U.S. Army is also interested in that technology. So we're trying to arrange for some more funding to follow through on that.
See, and now I know I've sidetracked it from the game, but I'd like to research.
Totally fine. Don't worry about it.
And I read through this, and this is the point at which I feel obligated to paraphrase Wayne's World and say I'm not worthy. Because of your career at NASA. Holy mackerel. Color me impressed, and thanks for letting us know, for those of us who weren't here for the first 2 interviews.
Well, early on, it's funny, when I was in high school, we did a vocational guidance test, and I scored really high on it, and they said, what would you like to be? And I said, a space engineer. This is when I was about 15 or so. And they said, well, there's not much opportunity for that in Australia, but we think you might be a good meteorologist. And so when I finished high school, I had an opportunity to come to the States and study aerospace engineering. And initially, my first job was as an aircraft structural engineer, but I got laid off from that job in Dayton, Ohio, and went back to grad school. And ever since then, I've been 100% space engineer and just loving it.
Well, when I tried to look you up the first time, I said, Dr. Trevor C. Sorensen, NASA? Do I have the right person? And I started to read this, and then I get to the bottom, and it says, oh, also gaming. And I said, holy mackerel. Well, anyway, and it's just, when it comes to NASA, I'm easily impressed, I guess. But this is just, your career at NASA has been amazing.
Well, the interesting thing is I was a lunar mission manager, and that NASA medal that I got that you mentioned, that was when I was working for the Department of Defense, not NASA, because the Clementine mission, the lunar mission, was a DoD mission, and they brought a NASA science team on board to gather use the data that the spacecraft got while it was in orbit of the moon. And I was the lunar mission manager in charge of the operations around the moon, and I worked very closely with the science team. And it was the science team that nominated me for that particular medal and a few others. And so that's why, even though I was a contractor to the Department of Defense at the time, I still got a NASA medal, which is a little unusual.
You might be the only podcast guest we've had that has a medal. I can't think of another one.
I got another one last year from the International Space Ops Organization. I got the Distinguished Service Medal. So.
Wow. You know, I had a friend that worked for the Department of Defense, and I said, well, surely you can tell me about she said, I had to sign something that carries through till 50 years after I die. So I feel at this point, aside from the game, I should get your autograph on a picture just for the NASA thing.
I did when I was working for the space shuttle, on the space shuttle as a guidance and control engineer, then assistant flight director on the space shuttle, and then a software manager. But while I was working on that, they wanted me to get a secret clearance to work the DoD flights. And so I was naturalized, became a U.S. citizen, and got a secret clearance in 1984. And I held the secret clearance until 2001 when I went and joined the faculty at the University of Kansas.
Well, hey, we got something in common. I was in the military, and I had a secret clearance, only because I had access to codes. But at this point, I'll just say, well, I'm sorry, but not sorry for turning this into the NASA show.
It's great because I honestly think Trevor's experience at NASA has helped, and in rocket scientry, is that the right word? Has helped make Starfleet rocket science. I think I was trying to say rocketry science. I think that's helped make Starfleet 2 a better game overall.
Some of the things in Starfleet 2 and Starfleet 1 actually I got from the shuttle program, like the master caution alarm in the space shuttle orbiter use the same tones and sequence that I use for the master alert or alarm in my games, for instance.
That's great.
Well, a couple of things, and then I'll leave you alone about this. First off is when David told me that you really are a rocket scientist, I thought to myself, oh, come on. Then I looked up your bio and I said, holy mackerel, he really is a rocket scientist. But beyond that, and I know it's probably well beyond any abilities might have, is there any way to mod this to put back in, instead of Krellians, the Klingons, just for myself?
Actually in the 1990s, early 1990s, I had a legal battle with a former colleague who was back in Houston, and I was living in the Washington D.C. area at the time, and they had copyrighted my design, my notebook in which I planned the Starfleet series. They had copyrighted it under their name. And so anyway, we had a battle about that. Unfortunately, my wife was working as a paralegal for the largest patent and copyright firm in Washington, D.C., and we got them on our side, and they just blew the Houston lawyer and this other guy out of the water. They were trying to stop Star Legions from being sold, and because they said they owned the rights to it.
The legal equivalent of calling in the Americans.
Yeah. Yeah, I brought in the big guns and like the battleship to blow out their rowboat.
Well, Jacob, that's what
legal equivalent.
Jacob, that's what we do.
The USS Iowa.
That's what we do, Jacob. We come in and we save y'all. I mean, that's what America does. Sorry.
Beautiful,
Well,
explosive freedom.
Anyway, so what happened is once we had won that battle, and that originally Star Legions was going to be called Legions of Krella, but because they said you can't use the word Krella or Krellan because we own the rights to it, and so so while we were resolving this, I changed the name to Star Legions, and I liked that better, so we just kept it. But if you read the box on Star Legion, it doesn't mention Krellan or anything like that on it because it was put together at this time before we had won the battle. But while we were at it, the attorney said, "Well, you probably should go ahead and register the trademark for the name Starfleet 2 Krellan Commander." So we applied to register that as a trademark. And then once it's entered, it's put out in the public register that for 30 days for comments. And just before the 30 days were up, Paramount Pictures contacted me and said, "We object to you using the word Starfleet because to register it because we have used it for a long time and we have a game about to come out called Starfleet Academy." And God. And I said, okay, well that's fine. I don't care that it's not registered, So I said, okay, we're not going to fight you on this one. So that cleared the way for them to be able to name Starfleet Academy.
I don't know. To me, it sounds a lot like the guy that tried to copyright podcasts.
Wait, what? What?
A number of years ago, somebody who tried to copyright podcasting and try and get everybody who has a podcast. You didn't know about this, huh?
No.
Yeah.
No, I'd never heard of that.
Yeah.
Oh,
but because of things like this, before I let the beta copy of my book out the door, I copyrighted it because I'm always afraid of the same thing that just happened to you.
Yeah, and I'm also like, I just periodically, I have to go through, since I have a contract with NASA, every year I have to go through their series of slides and about, copyright and protecting data and, the ITAR, International Trade and Arms Regulations, etc., like that. All the rules and regulations, and I have to listen or watch some videos and then answer quizzes, and to keep my contract, I have to do that, go through those every year. And not too long ago, in my senior design class for engineering, we had a guy from the university come and talk about patents and what you have to do to get a patent and everything like that. And it is so involved and expensive that it's just not, as far as I'm concerned, it's not worthwhile. I mean, we were thinking about patenting some of our NASA work that we're doing right now, but I don't think it's worth it.
Well, since Brian said it's okay, one last NASA fangirl question: Are you associated with the Europa Clipper at all?
With the what?
Europa Clipper spacecraft that launches next year.
No.
Okay.
Right now, I
feel like if he was, he wouldn't be allowed to tell you.
I'm not working any NASA missions at all, except for the ones that the Hawaii Space Flight Lab are working on. Now, with the company Interstellar Technologies, the university is our partner in that contract. And if we get a follow-on contract, which would to do a demonstration mission of putting 5 satellites up in orbit to spot look for wildfires and things like that, then also the Hawaii Space Flight Lab would probably be involved with building those satellites. But other I know a lot of people working on other NASA, NOAA, DoD satellites and projects, but I'm not doing them personally.
Thanks for indulging me.
Oh, sure. It's I sometimes I look at my own bio and I think, boy, that actually looks pretty impressive. But yet, I in some ways I don't really feel like I've accomplished that much or have done that much. The peak of my career was the Clementine mission, that I got the medal for. I mean, that was definitely the high point of my career. But I just that doesn't matter. But my wife thinks I'm always underselling myself. But then again, she's my wife. That's why I married her.
She's right. You do undersell yourself.
Well,
okay, let's get back to the game.
So, when it comes to the game, I might know the answer. I have one question. In terms of all the issues you had to chew through between starting the development of 2.0 and finishing it, was there one what was the one that was like the most persistently awful to deal with?
I think I know the answer too, but I'd like to hear Trevor's
Go
answer.
ahead, Brian. I want to hear what you think, Brian.
My answer, my guess at the answer would be the stutter bug. That was a persistent issue for, God, a couple of years.
Yes, and it had but once I found the cause of it,
oh my God,
which then it's never appeared again.
Right.
And
but would that be your answer to the stutter bug?
That was really annoying initially, but no, the one persistent bug that has plagued me from the beginning is running out of memory. And
yeah,
and like when version 1.5 came out, you had the main program and you had two overlays, which were the planetary invasion and the boarding. And they both, when they were loaded in, they replaced the main program, and you transferred data via data files between the two, and basically a save game. And then you would update the data, and then load in the main game again, and then read in the updated data. And so that was it, because back in those days you had to use floppy disks or diskettes, and so you had to swap in order. The main game itself took one diskette, so you'd have to take that out and put in another floppy diskette to do either the invasion or the boarding.
Oh man.
Okay, so now I wanted to add all these new features in, and I soon found out I was running out of memory, so I had to do overlays, and the overlays I'm doing are mostly ones where the main program sits in memory, but you have some free area up above that you can load in a particular overlay to do some functions, and then you transfer control to that, and it cannot read the data from the main program, so you have to write all the data that you need in this overlay out to a disk file, and then the overlay loads it in to use it. It updates it, then sends it to a disk file, which the main program then reads in and continues running. And so I had a number of these overlays that I had to put that could fit in on top of the main program. And I now have, I think, at least 20 or 25 overlays that I had to write in order to fit the whole game into memory. And so that's one of the things you don't realize, that the whole time you're playing, the program is writing data to disk, loading in new code, doing data transfers, and then loading in a new overlay, and all of that is going on. And that's sometimes why you will see a little bit of jerkiness in it, because and it's more noticeable on my 486. In DOSBox at the 3300 hertz, it's not very noticeable. Like when you have the hyperspace streaks, it's pretty smooth in DOSBox. It's pretty jerky on my 486. And that's not because of 486 processor, it's because the I/O to the disks is slower.
Right. That makes sense. The only way you can sorry, go ahead.
No, and I was going to say, and related to that, another thing that has been really annoying is memory clobbers, and I noticed there's one in version 2.0 that if you, when you sign on as an altern and you get the welcome message to the academy and that where you enter in your name and that, it mentions Emperor Henry, but the Zay the Fourth is clobbered in memory and it doesn't appear on the screen. And I've had to do, I mean, I'll have to look at that, but I've had to do really weird stuff like print a blank somewhere on the screen. Like, it's really annoying when you have a problem and I put in a print statement to print some parameters to look at related to the problem. As soon as I put that print statement in, the problem's gone. I take the debug print statement out and the problem's back in there again. And, things like that have just been really frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing that you're still having to work with these limitations 30 years later, even with DOSBox and everything.
I'm so looking forward to Deluxe.
I know. If you don't know what that means, folks, a Windows version of this game is in our heads.
It's planned.
It's planned. It's probably years down the line, but because people are like, "Can we have mouse support?" And we're like, "No, not in this one, but the next one, yes, but not in this one."
Which hopefully will take less than 30 years.
Oh yeah. Well, if I can get Interstel working on it, and we're actually thinking of doing a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe or something to try and collect some funds to be able to pay the Interstel programmers to work on the deluxe version, and if we can get sufficient funding, then I can get half a dozen programmers working on it, then I think we should be able to get it in about 2 years.
Yeah, we don't want just you working on it again, Trevor.
No, I'm not. I'm just going to be the sort of designer and project manager. I'm not planning on doing any of the programming.
Oh wow, okay. So you bring up your 486, and this is something I don't really remember, so I'm going to ask about it. So you worked on the original until about 1991, if I recall correctly. That's when 1.5B came out, and that was the last. That was the last public.
That's when
version.
That's when my family started. My oldest daughter was born in 91, so that was the end of my free time.
Yeah, that's fair, but. In 2018, you got your 486 running again. Is that what spurred you to start working on this again? You got your old computer working, or did you get the old computer working to start working on this? Like, how did...
No, what...
Go ahead.
When I was in Kansas in about 2005, I had... stayed in touch with people that were, playing version 1.5B, and we had just done the Starfleet Deluxe for the PC, and there were a couple bugs that were mentioned, in 1.5, and I thought, well, I'd really like to fix those. And so I got my old 486, and I had a 386 computer as well, and I got the 486 out. And I started working on debugging, and one of the first things I did was remove look up the manual security code on it. But then the computer died, and it wasn't till 2018 that one of my colleagues, I found out his hobby was working old computers and PC computers. And I said, hey, listen, I have this one that I really would like to get working again, because I'd love to finish doing the debugging or come out with a new version of Starfleet 2. And so he got it up and running again, and once I started on it, I'd had the first podcast, and that was 2016 with Brian, and then 2018 I started, and as I was working it, I thought, well, there was a couple things I think could be improved, and so I just started dabbling, and that led to where we are today.
Yeah, folks, if you're not aware, the game is still being programmed on an original 486, which is kind of amazing. Now, if I recall correctly, you have to take it from a floppy on the 486 to a laptop, and then you take what you did on the laptop to your primary PC. Am I remembering that correctly? There's a whole process.
Well, what I was originally doing was I have a Pentium computer that's running Windows XP, I think it is. It's a gateway, and it has a 3.5-inch drive on it. So my 486 only has a 3.5-inch and a 5.25-inch. So what I had to do was I copied it on the 3.5-inch, transferred it to the gateway, and then the gateway had a USB port, so I would then copy it onto a USB memory stick, which I then could put into my laptop. And the laptop is what I use. I don't use my desktop computer. I just use the laptop. And then I can run it on DOSBox or transfer it up to go into Steam. So I had to, it involved 3 computers, and then the gateway, I was having problems with the 3.5-inch drives, and I only had one good 3.5-inch drive, which I had on my 486, and I couldn't use the gateway anymore. And that's when I found that they have USB 3.5-inch drives. So I got one of those to plug into my laptop, so I could go directly from the 486 to the laptop using the 3.5-inch disc. But I've bought 3 or 4 of those USB drives because they keep crapping out on me.
Oh no!
Well, yeah, I mean I get all sorts of errors, and they ruin the discs and stuff. So I buy another one. It works for a while, and then it does the same thing. So I buy another one, and that's. And fortunately, during the Starfleet 2 transfer. Once I told you, once I got the checksum working, apparently the checksum scared this external drive, because after that it worked perfectly.
We take those.
Yeah, that's a win. We will take that win.
Yeah,
it was just at the right time.
Okay, if I'm allowed to tell a story, speaking of we take those, of the sort of bug I was regrettably put in charge of for Starfleet 2. When I was given the initial release for testing, or like the initial testing version, we ran into a problem in that apparently Poland has a different ASCII set than the entire rest of the planet.
Oh no.
Which Trevor worked formed a workaround around. I provided him with the right ASCII set, and there was an EU mode which I used to play as normal. Then there was we got the Steam release. We got the first beta Steam release, and for some reason the problem fixed itself. For some reason, the moment with the Steam release. Suddenly, despite me still playing on very much the same PC with all the same configuration, the game was running with American ASCII. But I asked Trevor if he did something about it. He said he didn't. So just like, I mean, I'll take it.
Yeah,
we'll take it. It hasn't broken so far. I still remember like reporting like roughly every update going, by the way, Trevor, the thing didn't break, so whatever you did didn't mess with it.
Well, I tell you, it took a lot of work on my part to put that Eastern European ASCII set in there. And when you told me that all of a sudden on Steam it was gone, I went ahead and commented all that code out and removed it from the settings. But the code is still in there just in case something happened. I could reactivate it.
Just in case it breaks.
That's good to know.
But now that it's released, I'm getting from a couple Germans have contacted me, and there's apparently a different keyboard for Germans, and the Y and Z are swapped on the keyboard, and that's caused some problems. And so I've been looking at it, and they don't know if there's a setting that whether there's a setting in maybe DOSBox or something that will account for that. And so if they can't get it resolved themselves, then it's a fairly easy thing for me to do, is to have them be able to select German keyboard and have the Y and Z swapped inside the game.
Yeah.
I can confirm that, but it's not much of a problem for older gamers like me, because if the Y key doesn't work, I use the Z key simply. I know it.
Fair enough. Now, God help you if you're French. And I know it's a bad time to mention it, but then there's the French keyboard setup.
Well,
AZERTY, which starts with AZ and then ERTY, which is an entirely different setup. Apparently used in France and in Belgium and nowhere else because they're insane.
We haven't heard anything about French or Belgian people playing the game, so I don't know.
Fair enough.
You have not made my day, and
well,
I'm willing to.
Don't stress about it. We haven't. No one's said anything. It's been 2 days. No one said anything about it, so maybe we don't need to do anything about it. I don't know.
I speak some German, so I'm more sympathetic to doing that one. So.
I don't blame you for not being sympathetic towards the French.
Don't let my wife
hear. To get that zinger in.
Don't let my wife hear you say that. Don't hear my wife. I have to say, Trevor, I don't know if you noticed this, but I want to thank everyone who's listening to everything. The launch has been, thankfully, knock on IKEA wood, pretty smooth. I'm very happy about. I mean, there haven't really been any big bugs. The only thing people are reporting are like a couple of typos in the manual, and we were working on that manual to like the morning of launch. So I'm not surprised there are a few things in the manuals that still need to be fixed. But
I will if I may comment on what you just said.
Yeah.
I've been monitoring the Discord and bug reports and that, and Hector and a couple others have found a couple legitimate bugs that I'll take care of. They aren't major, but they're just more cosmetic sort of things. Most of the bugs reported are because people don't understand how to play it. They've tried to play it without looking at the training manual or anything, so they're not.
It is in fact really not bugs. A bug; it's a feature.
yeah. That's one of my wife's favorite terms. So. But another thing is that we put a lot of effort into the manual, and I have a couple interns working for Interstel, Emma and Marina, who are working on revising or correcting the manual. I mean, there are some things that we didn't have time to do, like an index and list of figures and tables and a few minor things. I accidentally left out 2 figures, screenshots that I've put back in. But once the ops manual is stable, I really, really want to get a hard copy of it printed, a perfect bound hard copy.
Yes, please.
And I will plan on making it. I mean, and it will be in color. Won't be black and white like the original. And I want to make it available for people to buy. But I don't care whether anyone buys or not. I definitely want one for myself. Probably use like Vista.
Would probably
Vista
print on demand, which I have some experience with.
Yeah, it probably would be that. But I'm probably get Vistaprint to print the print at least one for myself, but I think Vistaprint also does print on demand.
I think so. I'm not 100%.
I've had a book printed by Vistaprint before. It was a hardcover book, and it was gorgeous. It was really good. It was just a one-of, like a coffee table book with some of my photography in it. But, it was really good.
That's nice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've also am a semi-professional photographer. Have run a business
damn it,
on
Trevor.
the side.
God damn it! How do you? Jesus Christ!
Can you maybe chill? Makes us all feel inadequate.
Slow down, man. How the hell else are we gonna feel good about anything if you do all the things? Come on.
Like, all due respect, Trevor. We're six nerds currently sitting in a Discord chat discussing space games once per week.
Could you stop being so good at everything? Damn it! Just let us.
We don't come out positive in that comparison in the slightest.
I'm actually envious of you guys because I really don't get time to play a lot of these games that you play. And
got it. It's a trade-off.
Well, I would suggest you take once we get 2.0 finished and bug free and all the manuals done and everything. Just take a little break and play something for yourself for a little while. My God.
Well, actually, I'm going to go to my comfort games to play, and
what are those?
They are Empire, the Interstellar Empire. I actually like that better than Empire Deluxe. The other one is that I really enjoy playing is Caesar 3.
Yes.
And that is I completed it once, and I usually get stuck in the North Africa desert one because that's a really difficult scenario.
That's where I always stop.
I mean, that's historically accurate.
That's where I always stop.
But I did a few years ago. I did complete it all the way through. I don't like Caesar 4 that much. They've complicated the gameplay, and it's not as enjoyable.
Caesar 4 is probably one of their weaker ones. I think Caesar 3, Zeus, Emperor, and Pharaoh are probably their peak games, honestly.
Yeah.
And Caesar 3 started that whole trend of peak impressions. If you don't know what we're talking about, folks, Impressions made a bunch of city builders. And their best one, and they made a bunch, but their best ones, I think, are Caesar 3, Zeus, Emperor, and Pharaoh.
Pharaoh recently got a re-release.
I was just about to say that. Pharaoh just got apparently a re-release that's apparently very good. I haven't had time to play it myself, but apparently it's very good.
I've had time to play it. It's good insofar as they haven't messed much with it. They just made it run on modern systems and gave it 1080p.
Why can't they always do that? I mean, I just think of the Startopia remake where it's like, wow, how do you make this remake worse than the original? How'd you do that? Anyway, back to Starfleet 2. So folks, if you're not aware, Starfleet 2 does come with 2 manuals, which are over 400 pages in length total. And you want to read those. You really want to read those. I suggest playing the game in windowed mode. The game has 3 windowed mode options at launch. And I suggest playing the game in windowed mode with one of the manual PDFs open because there's a lot to this game. It's basically a Swiss watch. There's a lot to this with a lot of moving parts. But it is truly an astounding thing. It really is. Trevor, I just want to say one thing I'm glad of, that you never made the game fully 3D, because no one really wants that. People say they want 3D, but no one really wants 3D. I'm just going to say that out loud. No one really wants that. And
they don't know what they're asking for.
They don't. I mean, they really don't.
I want 3D for some games, but
yeah, maybe a couple, but a lot of them just don't work when you add a third dimension. So I think keeping this solely 2D makes it more like a naval style game, which clearly is an inspiration, but also I think makes it more accessible.
One thing I did kind of find interesting is the game kind of ended up playing out like a naval game, but also like a modern naval game using modern ships with missiles and such, which really surprised me because there are very few actual naval games that do that. I remember this thing. Yeah, I played it yesterday. I was doing the final mission of Centurion, the one where you had to locate and acquire a light cruiser, which for some reason, I've decided to do the hard way, which is to say, try to poke a starbase and chip away at all the defenders until one of them decides to give up.
That is the hard one.
It worked.
You know,
It worked around the third try.
That is actually on purpose in the design of the game, that there is usually more than one way, especially get higher levels, there's more than one way to accomplish your mission. And sometimes the most obvious way isn't the easiest way. I'm trying to get people to be creative and think, you know, like the light cruiser is a very, especially capturing one, is a very difficult one because light cruisers have a special role in the game that's different than destroyers or heavy cruisers, and they tend to guard star bases, and which makes them very difficult to capture. But they also, you know, respond to distress calls. So the thing to do is to get a freighter or starliner, disable its engines with a hit and run by your shock troops, and so that it's continually sends out a distress call. And I did add a feature in the game early this year where you have enemy distress call indicators, so you can see that it really is sending a distress call. And if you wait there, then chances are that light cruisers and or destroyers will come to its rescue, and only 3 of them will come. And so that makes it a lot easier to get one rather than go to a starbase. But you have to, there are lots of tools, and you have to be creative and think of these other solutions.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties of this game, is it gives you the tools, especially with Fleet Command, to accomplish all these missions. Because friends, if you're not aware, when you start the game, you start very simply. It's you and your ship, just one ship, and you have to do some simple missions, and eventually you'll have command of the entire fleet, which is whoo. And but Trip, one of the big features of 2.0 is this thing. It's in the video here that we're streaming behind us, called Fleet Command, which gives you streamlined command of all friendly ships in the sector, in the region. And my God, that alone is worth the price of 2.0. I think Fleet Command is probably the biggest upgrade to 2.0, honestly.
You know, if you don't mind me interrupting, Fleet Command is, you know, you had to do it before. You had the Space Forces Command, which would list all the ships, and you could go in and command them, but they were just listed in their ship ID order, and the lowest numbers go to battle cruisers, and then supply ships, troop transports, and destroyers. And you had to go from page to page to page to get through them all, and you could call up orders to see what they're doing, but you had no connection as to which ships were escorting. I mean, no intuitive way of knowing what they're really doing or where they are or anything. And I thought that was one of the clumsiest aspects of the original Starfleet 2. And so I started to think about how could I come up with an interface that made it very intuitive and easy to have understanding of what your fleet's doing and to be able to control them or command them. And actually, Fleet Command turned out better than I hoped. I mean, it was very difficult to program, but I think it was worth the time and effort that went into it, because I think it's really good. But the thing is that one of the shortcomings of version 2, and this is solely because of the memory limitations in DOS, that I intend to do in Starfleet Deluxe, is to be able to design fleets. So you can have a formation. You can either have some custom formations, sort of like with the escort formations, but you can have like a wedge formation for your fleet, or I don't know if you've read the Lost Fleet series by Jack Campbell.
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorite.
That's I love those books, and that's one of the things I want to be able to do. And he organized Blackjack. Organizes the fleet with the destroyer squadrons and the cruiser squadrons and things like that.
Yes.
And to maximize the effect in an upcoming battle. And I want to be able to do that in the higher levels of deluxe, where I mean we're not going to be limited. Right now I'm limited to 50 Krellan ships at a time, 30 UGA ships at a time. I'm sorry, I'm revealing a secret.
That's still a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, but I want that to be possible. See, each ship has its own AI, and so you can just give general orders, and it will go off and do its own mission. You don't have to micromanage or anything like that. And so I want to be able to have it so that there are dozens of ships in action, or even if not even hundreds of ships in action at a time throughout the region. And you can gather together fleets in either custom design formation or some pre-canned formations to go into battle to attack a starbase. And I'll also have the enemy being able to have fleets to come against you.
Oh, that's brave.
That's one of my goals. I'm also going to introduce space carriers with fighter squadrons. I'm going to have monitors, which are fairly slow, but they go into orbit and are designed for bombarding planets. And
this all sounds amazing.
I mean, I have a Starfleet 2 is a step towards my ideal space game, and Starfleet 2 Deluxe is where I want to actually achieve it.
Oh my God, I mean,
so
if
again, hopefully it will take less than 30 years this time.
Yeah.
Well, if people are generous with the Kickstarter program, and we bought a 3D printer at Instel Technologies, and we have printed out 3D models of the battle cruiser and the Alliance heavy cruiser.
Wait, you have?
Yeah.
And we're going to. I'm probably going to hire some high school students to paint them. And I'm going to make them available to Kickstarter contributors that have that make a large enough contribution to it. I'm also going to have autographed copies of the ops manual, the hardcover ops, or the hard copy ops manual available. I'll make for Kickstarter. We're also going to get some Krellan cover, the Dave Dormanard of Stabbing the Planet. We're going to have posters made up of that, T-shirts and stuff. So
fancy.
Yeah,
that's what we're planning on offering for the Kickstarter.
But as long as you can keep everything as manageable as you keep with this game, that'll be great. And I'm sure you're already.
Don't Star Citizen yourself into a perfect game. We've seen what happens.
Yes, please keep it manageable. But I'm sure you will. I mean, what you've been able to do with this is nothing short of astounding, because I just want to say, if an idiot like me can learn this and get good at it, anyone can.
But by the way, I don't know if you have noticed in the credits for the game, in the inline credits, I have you listed, Brian, right after the developers of the program as the facilitator. and actually, I think it's going to be called the project facilitator, because this would never have come out on Steam without you. So
I'm so happy to have played a part.
That's a good title for you.
Thank you. I feel like it's been such a journey for both of us, really, but especially me, because I've never brought a game to life before like this, and it's just been exhausting and amazing and such a learning experience.
I learned some new colorful language from you when things went wrong with the game on the stream.
Well, though there was one time I got really, really angry. I don't exactly remember why I got super angry, but I was like yelling at the camera.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly why, but my God, I
sort of vaguely recall it myself, but I don't remember the specifics.
I don't remember the specifics either. I just remember like something felt really unfair. And the thing about this game is it rarely feels unfair. It very rarely feels unfair. Like most of the time when something happens, you feel like, oh yeah, I could have done that better, because it's a very well designed game, as we have said. But there was one time where something felt really unfair and it really shocked me to my core. And I was like, son of a beep, and I was very angry. I don't remember exactly why, but I was very angry. But this has turned into...
Wasn't it the Star Forts?
I maybe?
Wasn't it? I think it was the Star Forts that you had to take them out and you just could not do it.
A starbase?
I think
you mean the enemy starbase? Yeah, that was very difficult because... So, friends, there's one slight spoiler. There's a mission in the game where you have to capture an enemy starbase, and it is brutally challenging. You basically can't do it by yourself. You basically have to enlist the help of a bunch of other ships. You have to take their Marines and beam them onto the starbase, but also keep a bunch of Marines on your own ship. So when they try to board you, you have enough defenses that you don't get captured. It's a hell of a cat and mouse game that you only have to do once. There's only one mission in the game where you have to do it. You don't have to do it again. You can if you want to. You can do it whenever you want to. You only have to do it once. And it was very, very, very challenging. Oh my gosh.
I remember that might have been it, but I remember the first time you did it, no one had ever done it before. That code had never been tested. And what? And well, not since I'd made changes to it. And so when you boarded it with your shock troops, and it turns out that the enemy had an unlimited supply of space marines.
Oh God, that's right.
They start out with 500, but everyone was replaced. I mean, you ended up facing over 1,000 or something space marines, and so it was impossible to win. And so I had to go and fix that.
That'll do it.
This game tends not to have infinite anything.
Oh boy, yeah, no, yeah, you can't just do it with your own reserve of shock troops. You need to pull from your escorts. You need to pull from other friends. It's a hell of a battle.
And then they have a secret weapon that you only encounter when you come in close to them, which I won't reveal. But
I'm going to be honest. I don't remember what that is. Because I
don't know what that is because I've never done that. Mike.
When you come in adjacent to a disabled starbase, ready to send your trucks in,
I remember.
Be prepared for something.
I remember now. I'm not going to say what it is either. It's terrifying. I remember what it is now. It's terrifying. Yeah. That's only when you pull up next to. It's going to be rare you pull up next to an enemy starbase, y'all. So you'll only see this very rarely. But once you do, hold on tight. I remember now what it is.
See, now I'm curious to open the game and try it, and then inevitably lose a battle cruiser.
Well, I mean, if you want to open a
practice mode,
do it in practice mode.
There's a practice mode now. I didn't know that.
Oh, there's always been a practice mode. So the thing is, once you finish a mission,
demo.
It was called demo. Now it's called practice mode. So once you finish a mission, you can replay that mission as much as you want, and you'll get a random map every time. So if you just want to futz around and explore some planets, you can do that. So and you can just completely ignore the mission objective if you want, and just futz around. I do that all the time for testing and for my own enjoyment. It's great.
It doesn't affect your career or total values. Any krells or anything you earn are not kept.
Yeah, so any mission you have finished, you can replay in practice mode to your heart's content. And so that's a great way to I want to try and see what happens when I try to capture a starbase. And failing, nothing happens. So it's a great way to test things. It's a great way to try out new tactics. It's a brilliant little thing that I've probably played more practice mode than anything else because it's a great way to, I need to test something. I want to load up a practice mission and try and test this thing.
I do have a bit of a devious streak, though, too, is that I did not reveal the presence of orbital fortresses, and I let you go into a colony for the first time to discover them.
So evil, dude. That was
and actually, colonies want to stay hidden, and so the orbital forts will not shoot. They can shoot outside of orbit. And they have long range phasers and torpedoes. They can hit someone coming in, but they do not shoot until someone comes into orbit and discovers them. And
I didn't know that.
And from that point on, then anything approaching the planet is fair game. But up to that point, until they're discovered, they stay silent.
That's evil.
You could cruise right past the colony, and apart from running into mines, you would not know that there are orbital fortresses there. Now, it could be a regular UGA Tech Level 7 planet because they have mines as well, but they don't have the orbital forts.
Yeah, so tip, my friends, if you reach sub-admiral or if you reach the admiral mode, let your probes go in first. I know, up until that point, you might be like, I'm going to go check out this planet myself. No. Let the probes do it first.
Actually, the XO in the game now warns you if you target a planet that could be a colony. XO warns you.
Right, I forgot about that.
You might want to send a probe or a destroyer there to check it out first, because that could be a colony.
I forgot about that. I think I've only read
it. If it is, it might end up vaporized.
Yeah, they probably will. Well, destroyers might be able to get away, but probes, they'll be cooked.
Well, destroyers are expendable anyway.
Yeah, they don't call me the escort killer for nothing.
Oh god, the number of destroyers I chewed through attempting the light cruiser capture.
Yep. That's what they're for. That's what they're for.
I'm pretty sure I replaced my entire escort suite 4 times over.
Yeah, sounds right. I mean, that's what they're for. Dying gloriously to protect you. That's what they're for. And if they go out and battle, hey, that's what they wanted. So it's all good. It's all good.
Understood. Works for me.
We should probably start wrapping up. We've been going almost an hour and a half, so we should probably start wrapping up. It's getting late for our European friends.
And I have to get to work. I have a meeting in just over an hour from now to work on the satellite operations.
Well, Trevor, it has been a hell of a journey getting this to Steam and GOG, but I want to thank you for coming back on the show to talk about it. Friends, the game, Starfleet 2 Krellan Commander 2.0. It's a mouthful, I'll tell you what, but it's for $10, you're getting hundreds, if not, I've got well over 1,000 hours in the damn thing, and probably more because of the random maps and everything and the practice mode. You can play this indefinitely. It's an amazing game.
The game does have great replayability that it doesn't need because of how much progression it has.
Yeah, and the progression feels great because you're progressing your skills and your capabilities along with the game giving you more tools to do things. I mean, we've barely talked about planetary invasion, but the game has a ground strategy game as well when you invade planets. That was spawned off into its own game called Star Legions. It's an amazing game for $10. It's I think it's one of the best values. I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think it's one of the best values in gaming because, my God, you get so much gameplay. You're talking hundreds of hours for $10. That's amazing. It does have a learning curve, but it's got tutorials and manuals to help you. And we have a Discord at discord.starfleet2.com. If you want to come on and ask questions, we're friendly. We don't bite. And we want to help you get better at the game. So please feel free to come to the the Discord and ask questions if you have them. There are a lot of people there who've got lots of hours in the game. That'll help you out. And it's a really just astounding thing that I cannot recommend enough. So that's going to do it for today. We don't have a podcast next week because, sorry, we've been a little inconsistent in the podcast schedule. It's been, real life and whatnot. But we don't have a show next week because of the Thanksgiving holiday here in the States. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a topic show. Trevor, again, thank you so much for coming back on to talk about the game. It's been...
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure, and I'll be happy to come on again maybe sometime in the future.
Yeah, well when Deluxe starts being a thing, we got to have you back on to talk about that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no question we'll have you on again. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thank you in the chat for being so great. And we will see you back here tomorrow, I think, for more Colony Ship, because that game is great. And we're just going to play more of it tomorrow.
Oh, is it?
Oh,
I haven't checked it out.
I played 2 hours today and didn't have one combat encounter. I was able to talk my way out of everything. Love that. Love that. I was able to just charm my way out of every fight so far. Love that. So we're going to play more of that tomorrow. So have a great day, everyone. Be safe, be well, take care of each other. Please get your vaccines, get your shots, get all the shots, because we're still in a pandemic and people are still getting the flu. So please get all your shots. And thank you, as always, to our patrons who literally keep the lights on around here. And with that, we'll see you back here tomorrow, friends. Have